This episode is exclusively brought to you by Enjoy the Ride Records. They specialize in high-quality reissues from all of your favorite bands. Visit their website at enjoytheriderecords.com. Here's the episode. Welcome, everybody, and here is another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I'm your host, Ray Harkins. Welcome. Come pull a chair. Let's hang out. We have a very cool guest. Not going to lie, weird conversation, but cool guest in the form of Jake Snider, the vocalist of Minus the Bear. More on him in a minute. I got a ton of business stuff to get out of the way, so let's just dive right in there. You probably heard at the top of the show, we have a sponsor. We love when people find this show valuable enough to want to invest in it, partner up with us, and that's exactly what Enjoy the Ride Records has done. They're an awesome record label from Long Island that, like I said, specializes in vinyl reissues. Let's just run through a list of cool stuff they have coming out in November. They have the honorary title, Anything Else But the Truth, Dream Theater, yeah, how about that? Korn, self-titled. I remember when I got into that record when I was like, 13, 14 years old. That was heavy. And then they have Kevin Devine, Live at Looney Tunes, Cute Is What We Aim For. And they have, since I'm a huge fan of soundtracks, they have a really cool soundtrack coming out from a movie called Bridge and Tunnel, which features all new tracks from Long Island artists like Bayside, John Nolan from Taking Back Sunday, Vinnie Caruna of The Movie Life, and I Am the Avalanche. So much rad stuff. So basically, you need to check out this record label. Visit enjoytheriderecords.com. They've been a strong supporter of the show for a long time, and they decided that they wanted you to know about this rad stuff that they're doing. I've bought stuff from them before. High quality. You're getting the best of the best when you're buying from them. So check it out, and I promise you will not be sorry. So there's that. Last episode was our year-end spectacular extravaganza, over 2 hours, which is a long time to listen to anything. But for whatever reason, a lot of you like that episode in particular. That I can tell that there are people that don't listen to probably, I would say, 90% of the shows that we put out, but really pay attention to the year-end episode. So thank you for that. But I screwed up. And fortunately, I had one of my friends email me and was like, hey, dum-dum, that record came out in 2013. And I was like, oh, so the Iron Sheik record. Great record, but that came out in 2013. I, for whatever reason, was looking at the wrong information, and I screwed up. So technically, that record should be out of the rotation. You know, it's just my mistake. I just wanted to make sure that you, the listener, knew that I messed up from time to time. And, we're all not perfect. So that was a correction and omission standpoint. I also want to plug really, really good friend of mine and friend of the show. He appeared on actually one of the most downloaded episodes of all time. Tommy Rogers, the vocalist of Between the Buried and Me, released his own solo record called Modern Noise. It's really, really good. So go to any digital provider and you can find it. Tommy Rogers in iTunes and Spotify and Rdio, whatever way you consume music, he has vinyl for this release as well. So that's what we do here. We support the scene. There's one more thing that I had to get off my chest, particularly because it happened to me this morning. Every week on Fridays, I get an email from a person who compiles a bunch of iTunes reviews that this show has got from a worldwide perspective. So I got a really negative review on iTunes. And it's so weird because it's one of those things where it's like you feel like you're doing a good job at something and you're just kind of plugging away and people are saying nice things to you, saying nice things online, and you feel like some momentum is being had. And then all of a sudden, something like this comes up where the person basically was like, you suck at interviews, you interrupt people, you don't know your information. I tried to listen to a few and it's just straight up worthless. Something like that gets put in front of me and I trip and I'm just like, oh, okay. You try to ignore it, but it just sucks. And I get where a person like him or her is coming from, where it's like they've tried to get into something and straight up just don't like it. Like, for example, me personally, I am a devout listener to podcasts. There is a podcast from a megastar named Jeff Garlin. You will see him alongside of people in Curb Your Enthusiasm. But he's a movie star. He doesn't give a shit about my opinion. But I tried to listen to his podcast and I just can't get into it. He talks to really cool people, but I don't feel like it goes anywhere. I feel like he says a lot of the same things over and over, and he just relies on these verbal crutches that I know that I do myself. So I'm not really throwing him under the bus for that. But anyways, if I were to leave a review for him, I would probably say something to that effect. But I don't. I just don't want to put that negativity out there where it's like, do I need to put a 1-star review on iTunes? And I'm not faulting the person that did this for this particular show, but it's just, I don't know, it questions so many things, not only about myself, but then about the nature of us living on the internet. And but needless to say, I'm going to move past it. I just had to get it out there. So, if you feel like this show sucks, I get it. That's totally fine. And I appreciate any sort of constructive criticism. I am cognizant of the fact that I sometimes jump in on guests. I try to learn, but realistically, that's me as a person. I'm always going to kind of, for lack of a better term, dominate the conversation. I don't do that here. I let the interviewee lead that conversation. But, I try to steer it in certain directions. But anyways, enough of that. Let's talk about Jake. Jake is the vocalist for Minus the Bear, and I was obsessed with Minus the Bear for the first couple years of their existence. Like, just devoured all of their material. Saw them, honestly, on their first EP, I think I saw them like 5 or 6 times. They were one of those bands where I would see them in LA, I would see them in San Diego, I would see them in Orange County. Wherever they were playing, I was there. I'm going to fault a lot of this interview being kind of weird and different on myself, because basically, they were in the middle of promoting a B-sides release, which is called Lost Songs, which is a great collection, by the way. They're in the middle of a press cycle. So, a publicist reaches out to me. He's like, hey, would you be interested in having Jake on the show? And I was like, I don't know him personally. So sure, this sounds awesome. I would not have a connection with him otherwise. And, sometimes when a person is in the middle of a press cycle, I am just a name on an interview sheet. I am not anything special or particular. And, sometimes that can be to my disadvantage, because obviously this show is meant to be kind of something different than just your average interview. I don't think Jake was expecting the sort of conversation I was trying to have with him. So needless to say, it's a little bit weird. We get interrupted a few times, and it's not the smoothest interview I've ever done. I will admit that. But we got to some interesting places, and we did unturn some stones that I don't think have been turned for him in quite some time. So without further ado, this is my conversation with Jake from Minus the Bear, and I will talk to you afterwards.
What did you do? What did you do? You got some heat on you. Got some heat on you. They've been tracing all your moves. Your mark has made you his, and if you want...
Minus the Bear first released your very first EP. It was one of those things that I was already previously interested in what you were doing after State Route 522, Sharks Keep Moving. Was already a fan of what you had going on. And then
Cool.
When you decided to create this super group, I was like, oh, I'm all in. How could I not like this? Botch and Sharks Keep Moving, great combo. Mm-hmm. And so you guys kind of, you guys played, I'm based in Southern California. You guys played down here a decent amount during that time. And I was shocked that so many people immediately took to what you guys were doing, mostly because I felt that your previous bands went relatively unnoticed, and no slight against you. Just that was kind of the climate of the scene, so to speak. Was it weird when you started to play out with Minus the Bear and have people like, hey, there's people at shows, like, this is interesting?
Yeah, it was a good thing. I mean, it didn't really start immediately. There were a few shows with a couple people at them, even after a couple years of nationally touring and whatnot. But it was an interesting place to start from, because we already had like a booking agent and a lawyer, and we had the EP recorded before we played a show. So on the way, we were just, kind of like, let's do this. Let's see what happens.
Was that a deliberate decision in regards to kind of, because usually when people do the, whatever, second or third band, you feel like you have a better grasp on the business side of things. So was that a deliberate move that you guys were like, let's see if we get this set up properly, what can happen with it?
Yeah, definitely. We wanted to just make sure that we had our ducks in a row. That's it, basically. We wanted to have an agreement between ourselves and friends, so we wanted to make sure that it was easy to stay that way. So
sure.
Yeah, setting it up with a little bit of an idea towards the future, I think, was definitely helpful.
Sure. So it wasn't like hey, so the next 4 years we're going to be playing to -4 people a night.
Yeah, exactly.
So you yourself, were you born and raised up in the Pacific Northwest, as it were? Or where did you come up?
Yeah, I was born in Seattle and lived on the east side of Lake Washington over in Bellevue and Woodinville. And then, right after high school, moved back to Seattle.
There's not that much differentiation between the suburbs of Seattle, besides like once you travel south to Tacoma, that's a whole different beast. But is there much differentiation from the suburbs to the city besides, I mean, the obvious cultural trappings that are featured in the city?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like once you get outside of Seattle, it's just you just get that total suburban vibe, flip-flops and baseball hats. It's
cargo shorts.
Yeah, it's the city's trying to be as metropolitan as possible.
So what was your family structure like? Brothers and sisters, and what did your parents do for a living as you were growing up?
I have an older sister. She's 2 years older than me. My dad owned a furniture sales dealership, like a office furniture dealer.
Oh, okay. And so did your mom work, or was she just taking care of you guys at home? She
took care of the kids. Very traditional.
Very traditional family.
Yeah.
Suburbs, white picket fence, taking care of the family.
Yep, they're a little older.
So as you started to grow up in the suburbs, when did kind of independent music start to infiltrate your life from that perspective?
Basically just through skateboarding and that kind of thing. Like heard my friends' older brothers' cassettes while we'd skate at their houses, and heard the Descendants and Social Distortion and a bunch of stuff, and then skate videos. Mm-hmm. Huge exposure to that kind of. A lot of it was SST stuff.
Sure.
And Husker Du, and some weird big drill car and all.
Right. Was it just being from obviously the Pacific Northwest and being exposed to the SST scene? Was it? Did you kind of mythologize Southern California just because all this interesting stuff was sort of coming out of there?
Not really. Not really. I mean, they even had, like SST had Soundgarden also at the same time. So
sure.
There was kind of a little bit of a Seattle connection there. And then there was, up in Seattle, there was like CZ Records that had Tree People and
sure.
Coffin Break and a few other bands. I think Hammerbox. So and I was, my friend gave me a Nirvana Bleach on cassette and stuff, and that was pretty punk at the time. So.
Sure.
Yeah, it was kind of not being, just submerged in the scene here or the music coming out of here, but definitely that influence from skating and snowboarding videos, and a little bit of that SoCal thing going on.
Sure.
A while ago.
How old were you during this time?
Between 13 and 15.
Sure. This is an observation, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you, in not only the way that you've always presented yourself musically, but just kind of, being in the same rooms as you seemed like an extremely laid back dude. The connotation of being drawn towards, aggressive music or subcultures, as it were, doesn't typically, go together as far as like the, laid backness and the aggressive nature of music. Is it one of those things that you were more discontent as a youth from that perspective, or was it you've arrived at where you're at right now, the laid backness, as it were?
Oh, I've always been a little bit laid back. I think that really disappointed with the music I heard, when I was growing up, like top 40 stuff. I just hated most of it, and all the kind of underground punk or even metal, like, was pretty interesting to me. Mm-hmm. So like I was listening to, Metallica, Megadeth, and Slayer at the same time I was listening to Descendants and Bad Religion. It was all one
genre of music that wasn't being obviously featured on the radio or shown on whatever, MTV at the time.
All these different things that were, I guess, on some level a little bit anti-establishment.
Mm-hmm. Did you ascribe to any of those anti-establishment beliefs yourself as you were matriculating through high school? Like, did you cause trouble, and did you you make your parents scratch their heads as far as like, dude, what is Jake bringing home? This is some weird stuff.
They've always been supportive of the whole music thing. Yeah, I don't think that there was a lot of like the straight up rebellion. I thought that at the time, in high school, late high school, whatever, their form of I was a straight edge kid. Mm-hmm. So that was like a form of rebellion against like the drunk jocks and whatnot.
Sure.
So there was that, and I had to listen to all that straight edge hardcore as well.
Of course, right.
Yeah, so
Well, that's part and parcel. You gotta.
yeah, that was part of the deal.
I think it is interesting when you adopt, a straight edge lifestyle when you're in high school, how you feel in some respects that gives you a pass with your parents because you're like, hey, I'm not doing all this other stuff that kids are getting into, so I should be allowed to go to, shows 4 nights a week or whatever.
It's a trick.
Yeah, it is. It's a nice little ruse, and then you hit 21 and you're just like, okay, I'm not straight edge anymore. That got me through that time. Thanks.
Yeah, pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah. And so were you, like you said, your parents were supportive of the musical path you started to, show an interest to. Why do you think that is? Were they just generally supportive over whatever you were passionate about? Or was it one of those things that they had musical interests themselves? So they were kind of like, hey, that's cool. Like, go for it.
My sister was into horses, which is a lot less involved than music. So I think that they were happy to pay for some guitar lessons and help me out with a crappy red Squire Stratocaster or whatever back in the day.
Right.
I don't know. I think that they thought that my habits were a little easier than hers. Yeah, and I don't think that they necessarily thought of it as like a future career for me or anything like that. But
they're like, oh, well, this is cheaper than buying them a horse.
Yeah, and it's, music's good for the brain or something like that.
Yeah. So some books have told me somewhere.
So they say, yeah.
So then what was your sort of career path, as it were, as you, started to get near the end of high school? Like, did you have any, interest in doing stuff in a professional world?
I did. I just didn't have any idea what that meant at the time. I mean, there was no internet to speak of that would illuminate that for a kid that age. So it was just kind of like, I was probably 18 or something like that when State Route went on tour the first time. Mm-hmm. And so got the Book Your Own Fucking Life magazine from Fallout Records and started calling people and booking shows. I mean, it's a very, it seems a little naive, but that's just kind of the way that you have to start. I think at some level, you just have to begin.
Right.
Yeah, it's like a lot different than the already having a booking agent and whatnot that we do now.
State Route started when you were, a junior or senior in high school?
Probably right after high school.
Okay. And do you, obviously nostalgia has its way of, painting our views as far as, the farther we are away from our first musical projects. It's a very appealing thing. Do you look back at that time fondly as far as like, oh yeah, putting together those 7 inches and touring up and down the West Coast as a formative experience, or was it like, well, I'm glad I made those mistakes early?
Oh yeah, it's totally formative. It's you learn a hell of a lot of stuff about kind of about what it takes to be a touring musician, and kind of how bad it can be. Yeah, it's an interesting situation at that level when you're just calling people and booking shows at somebody's house or something like that. But I guess I look back on it fondly. Right. It's like it was fun. Met a lot of people that I still know now. So yeah.
Well, yeah, I definitely think there's something interesting about the notion of DIY, punk or hardcore, indie rock, whatever label you want to put it on there. You do develop these weird friendships that last for 15 years when sometimes people that don't have that experience find it weird staying at someone's house that you don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you sleep on, this is kind of minus the Bears experience in Europe at the beginning, just sleeping on people's kitchen floors and roughing it that way. No money for even a hotel. So
State Route, you guys played together for what, 2 or 3 years, or was it a little bit?
Yeah, a couple of years, something like that.
Yeah. Did you feel like there was any momentum in that, as far as like, oh, we can take the next logical step up and release a full length or something like that, or was it pretty much just like, let's put one foot in front of the other?
Put one foot in front of the other. Yeah. Not a lot of thought. I mean, not that I remember, not a lot of ideas about making it big or anything like that.
Yeah.
Just chilling, playing some music.
Which is essentially what you're doing now as well.
Right. Yeah. So it's the same thing.
It seems like in watching you're tracing the lines through your musical progression, it just sounds like the, from the transition from State Route to Sharks Keep Moving to obviously what you're doing with Minus the Bear, as you've grown older, the sounds have, for lack of a better term, like smoothed out. It's obviously not as, whatever, for lack of a better term, like jangly or aggressive. I presume that was just a function of your songwriting ability, or was that just your own personality obviously coming out in what you were writing?
It was just our ever-increasing maturity coming to bear. Yeah, to bear fruit in the smooth adult contemporary realms. Yeah, I don't know. I think that the five of us, we're like trying to balance the whole hard soft thing these days, like more for our own taste than anything. I don't think we think about a lot of, how much, what's it like. We don't think what's it like now, more we just kind of want to do something that's like that. We want to play stuff that we want to play over and over, basically.
Sure.
And the some of the smoother stuff is part of that. Like, it's just kind of nice, reflects our, grown influence or different influences that we've developed over the years and whatnot too.
Yeah, sure. And something that always struck me too about, especially when Minus the Bear began to exist, you guys reflected this sense of humor that didn't really particularly exist within the context of indie rock, as it were. It's like you guys seemed like you were, especially from the long song titles and kind of the, silly album names and all that sort of stuff, earlier in the band's career. I presume that was very deliberate to be like, okay, like we take the music seriously, but we're kind of goofy dudes.
Yeah, and we were of the mind at the time that, all these songs that people just call them whatever the chorus is or whatever, just boring. So let's do something a little more fun. And it became kind of a ridiculous, drunken thing to do. Like, you just hear somebody say something absolutely asinine, and you end up, somebody says, oh, that'd be a rather good song title. And then we, write it down or whatever.
Write it on the whiteboard and say, oh, that's dibs, I guess.
See if that works.
So technically, most of those song titles were just terrible jokes that ended up sticking.
Yeah.
As things started to become more serious from a sort of career standpoint, from Minus the Bear's perspective, when did you yourself start to feel like it became a thing, so to speak, where it was like, oh wow, like this is pretty serious. Like I guess I should write my occupation down as a musician. When did that start to occur in your head?
There was kind of like a leap of faith, just knowing, what we wanted to do. And I was in telephone sales at the time, which wasn't that fun.
I like how even in describing telephone sales, you're gentle about it. Oh,
yeah,
it wasn't that fun. No, it
wasn't that fun, but it wasn't that bad either. It could have been worse.
Okay.
Actually, I don't know if you know Rocky Votolato, but
of course, yes.
He worked there we were on the phone selling stuff.
I can't imagine Rocky being a very good salesman.
He was pretty good.
Were you a good salesman?
I was okay. I was okay. I was good.
Right. You okay.
I beat my numbers most of the time.
Well, that's good. That's good. You always gotta worry about those numbers.
Yeah. I was doing that and not really digging it. So, and the band was going at the time. Basically, thought it would be interesting to just kind of quit my job and see how things went over the next few months with the band. And just getting married, my fiance was totally supportive, and she said, we could probably make it work on what I earned for a little bit of time, so give it a shot.
What record time frame was this?
This is like 2001.
Okay, so relatively earlier on. Something I also noticed as well, especially in regards to the immediate attraction of people to the band, was the fact that you guys were a quote-unquote a technically proficient band. A lot of times when bands become known for their technicality, they kind of fall into that band's band category, where it's like, they're good dudes, we like to tour with them, but they're not worth any tickets, but they're fun. Like, they're fun to hang out with.
Right.
You guys kind of grew past that, but people still seem to really concentrate on the fact that you guys, like, oh, dude, they're shredders. But it's becoming less and less of a thing now. Was it nice to not talk about how to play your songs in interviews after a while? Yeah,
definitely. To talk about the thing as a piece rather than talk about like technique or something like that. Yeah. And when you're writing songs and as a group of guys, I think that it gets when people focus on just technique, it gets a little bit samey. We still hear that band's band thing and whatnot.
Yeah.
But it's also we are also the people's band.
Right. We do when we play major cities. We can get people to come out on our own.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yes.
And it's great. Like, I mean, it's a really cool, diverse fan base. Kind of, I think, captures a lot of different. Like, people grab onto different aspects of what we do, and that's what I think that does help the draw and helps us continue on.
I agree. I think it also obviously makes you guys have a longer shelf life where it's like you don't have to worry solely on like, all right, we got to keep the 14 to 18-year-old kids in the door and kind of pull different people in from different musical genres to you felt like that really opened you guys up to a lot of people who had no clue who you were?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we had some. I mean, we've had people at most of the shows on the last tours, a couple at least, that will come up and they'll be, a little older than our traditional clientele, but that's where they heard of us. And,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of ideal.
When you did make that leap in your own head in regards to, okay, like we're going to give the band a serious try. That was the first time that you had ever done that with any of your musical projects, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though you had the support of kind of everybody around you, was it still pretty terrifying for you to be like, okay, I guess this is what I'm doing?
I guess could have been scarier.
Your responses are so even keeled. I am. You're very unflappable.
Oh, good.
Not to say that the questions I am throwing at you are trying to flap you by any means. It goes back to the laid back nature that I'm placing on you.
Yeah, I'm a little laid back. It's true.
Again, you're not saying you are laid back. You're just I'm a little laid back. I'm not fully admitting that.
Yeah, I can't say.
Yeah, you're just. Are you seething right now? I apologize.
No.
I don't mean to. I'm kidding.
Oh.
Like you were alluding to earlier, talking about the different musical genres that you were kind of going through in your own personal life, from obviously like straight edge hardcore to indie rock and all that stuff. How have you personally kind of kept the I guess vigor and passion alive in regards to honestly caring about independent music even separate from your band, or do you kind of try to really keep those worlds separate where it's like, yeah, I like music, but I'm going to go back to the classics that I like, so to speak, and not pursue too much new stuff?
Yeah, I don't really listen to a lot of new stuff. A few bands that I dig these days that are contemporary, but and not that I don't like a bunch of bands. It's just that when I listen to music at home, it's usually something else. Like,
right.
Yeah, stuff that like a lot of the stuff that I missed out when I was being too into punk rock and ignoring like the radio music that was actually pretty awesome. Because
you were supposed to ignore it. I find it interesting too that in looking at your like your Twitter feed, you have a very you're very political in the sense of you have views and beliefs that aren't necessarily espoused by either fellow musicians that are involved in music or whatever. Whereas, like we were joking about, your personality doesn't necessarily indicate that have a strong stance against these things. Do you find yourself being more interested in this or more interested in the political side of our world, or has that always been kind of something that has always been an interest to you in general?
I've always been interested in it. I think the way it's interesting being like a grown man, like nearing 40 and whatnot, and seeing like how ridiculous everything is. How stupidly everything is done, and the wastefulness of the process or whatever. It's just things seem like common sense don't generally happen in a commonsensical way. So, like the way the justice system works, as we've seen the past like couple weeks, and actually for since the drug war started, the police have changed, just from being kind of there to protect us or to, fight crime and whatnot, to a kind of, it's us against them. It's this war mentality that, war on drugs began, and the 9/11 war on terror kind of exacerbated and whatnot. So, I mean, it's just, but it's like, you can read the Constitution and that police aren't allowed to behave the way that they often do, and politicians aren't. And
did you find yourself like, when you first started to get into like, punk and hardcore and stuff like that, do you think any of that is left over? Like that sort of like discontent that obviously bands of that genre, tend to espouse? Was that something that kind of started to plant the seeds back then that kind of carries you through now?
Yeah, totally. I'm just not necessarily so anti-disestablishment that I can't try to make, hope that things can get better using the tools we have now.
Sure.
Not like some kind of 15-year-old, like the anarchist mentality or whatever that some people grow up in, and God forbid they turn into libertarians or something.
Sure. So you weren't dumpster diving, food not bombs, all that sort of stuff?
No, not really.
Do people communicate with you in regards to the political beliefs that you espouse? Because I just find the only reason I hit on that is because it's not, honestly, it's not typical for a person to kind of speak out on a regular basis, via their social media, unless it's something that's like so universally accepted. But you seem to kind of whatever, quote unquote, push the edge of like, no, this is something that I believe in, and some other people, I want to open a dialogue about this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my beliefs aren't radical or weird or anything like that. And they're not, I don't think, extreme. I mean, maybe that's because I grew up in Seattle and it's a very liberal culture here. But yeah, I mean, none of these things, that I've ever really talked about online seem contentious to me at all. Like when it becomes contentious, like if somebody does reply with their issues with a claim I've made or something that I pointed out, I'm always surprised by it. I mean, and then I look at like their profile, and then it'll say like mother, warrior,
right,
quilter,
right.
Jesus, I don't know.
Things that don't necessarily match your sensibilities.
Yeah,
right.
I'm anti-authoritarian to the, in the point where I don't think that the authority has rights over your body and what you can personally do with your time and whatnot. Your body,
right.
Sex, nobody's business for sure. So, I mean,
Sure.
you've got. I don't think it's radical to say that the right wing is totally fucked up and wrong about homosexuality and like climate change and evolution. So these very reasonable things. It's like, well, what about the rest of it? You got to keep looking, and it's all just about as reasonable as that stuff anyway.
Right. Yeah, you're like, I feel like I'm saying common sense things, but oh yes, there are people that think that I'm batshit crazy by saying this.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd say that a lot of the people that think I'm batshit crazy also think that the Earth is 6,000 years old, or that dinosaurs are a trick put here by Satan, or something like that. So
right.
not really,
right.
Or they're, or if it's something like, I get into it with anti-vaxxers too. So if it's something like that, make believe, people just are. A lot of people are willing to believe things that fit what they want rather than what the data says.
Sure.
I usually follow that.
Right. That's your guiding principle.
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah. Did you speaking of religion, did you have a religious upbringing at all in regards to your formative years?
No, my parents took us to church until I was, I don't know, 10 or 8 or 10, and I said I didn't want to go anymore. Right.
You're like, it's too early.
Yeah.
I gotta bail. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I've noticed that, more than one person, like over, in preparing for speaking to you, that people have like pulled random either lyrics or song titles and been like, oh, so you're a spiritual person, right? And your response has always been funny, because I'm just listening to or not listening, I'm reading these interviews, and you're always like, oh yeah, no. And I find it funny that people seem to be searching for something when nothing is really there. Do you find that people project a lot of stuff on you?
Yeah, totally. I mean, just because I'm an atheist doesn't mean I'm not allowed to use the word God or talk about like some of the, cultural mythology there or whatever. So I can
right.
see how people could think that, but I mean, I hope that if you don't cherry pick lines, then it would show you that most of the time that religion's portrayed a little negatively in my lyrics.
Sure.
So
yeah, you're like, if you read one more sentence, you realize that it's a whole picture I'm painting. Mm-hmm. Where you're at now in your sort of musical career, is that since you've had obviously a lot of experience from the touring aspect, and obviously a lot of different experiences within the context of recording studios. They obviously both have their merits, but, is there one thing that you tend to prefer over another? Is it do you still enjoy touring? Because touring's tough. Like, anybody that hasn't toured doesn't know that.
Yeah.
Is it still, especially now, obviously, because you have a family and there's a lot more reasons for you to obviously spend more time at home. How does that all kind of sit in your head now?
Yeah, especially now. It is really difficult with the kids, and I've got the 3-year-old and a little 4-month-old girl too. So it's just more challenging because you don't want to leave, and it's practically challenging because you have to figure out how you're going to have support for your wife while you're gone. But touring's better than the studio, I think. Studio's a little torturous for me. It's a little, I don't know. It's fun to create music, but it's fun. I like the practice space writing part, but sometimes the studio can just be relentlessly boring and also challenging.
It's rough. It's also, especially from a vocalist perspective as well. I sang in a bunch of hardcore bands, and I always my least favorite part was doing the vocals and then coming back into the room and having everybody. At this point, you've kind of spit and sweat all over the vocal booth, and you come in kind of like heavy breathing. You felt like you accomplished something, and then they all kind of look at you like, cool, like so unenthusiastically, like, oh yeah, that's like, way to go, man. Yeah. Or then take your whatever lyric you said there and been like, oh, hey, did you say you're a complete fuck up there? You're like, no, I didn't say that at all. Or just make fun of your lyrics.
Oh yeah, that'll happen.
Right.
Yeah, I try to when I'm singing, I try to send everybody away most of the time. Less and less these days. Yeah, it's just easier. Yeah, because they're loud, and most of the studios that we work in don't. But when we're just doing vocal tracking, sometimes don't have the best isolation. But yeah, it's just stressful doing the vocals, because you're like, I just play guitar in a band and I'm recording this record, and then you have to go into the vocal booth and be like, oh, here's some poems I wrote and set to music with a melody, and I want all of you grown men to hear it now.
You're like, that's not normal. Many normal people would listen to that circumstance and be like, oh, I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. But then they don't realize that's exactly what it's like playing in a band.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's raw. It's an awful reality.
Right.
It's like, people are like, what do you do for a living? It's like, oh, I write songs in a horrible room with my friends and then record them and tour. I don't know. It's weird.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, as you're obviously watching, your legacy grow up before you with your kids and stuff like that. How does it sit in your head in regards to, once they start to get into stuff that doesn't make sense to you at all, from either, bringing home music or different ideas? Is that something that is, I wouldn't say concerning to you? Is it one of those things where you're trying to mentally prepare yourself in some capacity for that?
Totally, yeah. Like when my son comes home and he's a total pro-life Republican or something like that. Yeah, that'll be rotten. I'm kind of looking forward to it, just to see what rebellion looks like, in a family like ours. Yeah, it's just going to be interesting because I can't really lie to him about, I'm not going to lie to him about what my life's been like or what I've done. So he's going to ask about stuff, and I'll be like, well, here's the real deal. Here's what you got to know.
Here's what you shouldn't drink. Here's what you shouldn't do during this time.
Yeah. He'll rebel by being like, no, Dad, no, I won't go out tonight.
Right.
I'm going to study.
Yeah. And you'll be like, I didn't do that at all. I don't understand what you're doing. The one last thing I want to hit on before I let you go is the more so a common theme of your earlier musical career was, the fact that I'm sure a lot of people just presumed you yourself were a complete drunk. Is it one of those things that I mean, obviously now because those records are older, it's probably less of a thing now, but were people concerned like you had a problem, or like, oh, Jake, maybe you should take it easy? Like, was that a thing?
It's never really come up. The thing, I mean, we were all just, drinking buddies basically when the band got together. And so that kind of has continued since then. And it's, when you're in a band on the road and you do have kind of access to a bunch of drinks all day, you're going to have a bunch of drinks. And so, we drink a lot, and sometimes it's a problem and sometimes it's not. And sometimes people are quit, and sometimes people are on the wagon, sometimes they're not.
So it's been a ever evolving process with you personally. With me. When did you yourself stop being straight edge? Was that like, was it 21 and then you're like, okay, that was enough?
I was probably like 22.
Was that a big deal for the friends that were surrounding you?
Oh, I don't think so. Yeah, I think I can't even remember there was any impact at all, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if there was, it was completely dulled by time.
Yeah, something worse was happening. I don't know.
I presume at this point the band's focus is obviously for longevity and keeping what you guys are doing exciting and interesting and relevant. Not even so much to the people on the outside, but probably for you guys individually. Is it one of those things that structure of Minus the Bear now? Is it kind of a machine from that standpoint where it's like it's easy for you guys to exist in this, or is it like constantly have to kind of push yourself to remind yourself to be creative and keep that thing going?
Yeah, the creativity side, especially with the kids and how busy that makes two other guys have 2-year-olds or more, so there's always that struggle to be able to get together and play music and find the time to sit down and strum a guitar. So that's the biggest challenge creatively at this point is just getting back into the swing of things, just doing the work while the kid's taking a nap instead of you taking a nap too.
Right. Yeah. Do you find yourself being more efficient with your time?
No, not at all.
No, it's the complete opposite.
Yeah, it's like when I get a chance, I'm just like, I sit and listen to a record. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's
all I want.
That's the max. Well, I have to say this is probably the most casual interview I've ever done.
Oh, good.
Which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like it too. It's kind of like just us getting to know one another.
Good deal.
So there. That was Jake. And like I said, it was weird. There was definitely not the typical conversation that I have on this show, but that's fine. These things are different. Visit the sponsor of the show, enjoytheriderecords.com. Amazing vinyl. If you're into vinyl and you haven't visited their website, you're doing something wrong. So visit them. Our producer and confidant, as always, is Tom Richfield, and he'll be in the States like in a week, and I'm really excited about that. We can hang, shower him with gifts and back rubs and other ways of paying him back for all the sort of work that he puts into the show. And visit 100wordspodcast.com. And yes, I'll talk to you next week. Be safe, everybody.
Thank God!